Okay, this is some more Italian folk stories, traditional to Strega. This is the story of Rorasa. I don't know if I'm saying it properly, but Rorasa, Rorasa. Now she's a beautiful, beautiful girl, a woman, a mortal, and she's betrothed to a handsome man. They were put together and betrothed to each other because they were both so handsome and beautiful. Due to war and to fate, basically, these two families, which were pretty wealthy, pretty well off, were left poor and destitute due to the war and all those kinds of things. But because of her pride, Rorasa refused to get married because her wedding was supposed to be very luxurious. She wanted lots of bridesmaids, she wanted the best wedding gown and all of that. So all the other girls around who had been jealous of her before because of her beauty and all of that, they laughed at her, they mocked her, they made fun of her. So she was so humiliated that she threw herself off a very high tower to kill herself. But as she was falling off this tower, a beautiful woman, goddess, took her hand and brought her down to safety, saving her. People in Italy, being Catholic, assumed that this was the Madonna, the Virgin Mary. But the lady who saved her appeared to her again and said, "If you are to follow and worship anyone, follow the gospel of Diana." So the lady worshipped the moon, she got down on her knees, and she invoked Diana. The very next day, she ended up with a miraculous wedding. She was brought a beautiful gown. It just all happened perfectly for her. She had 10 beautiful bridesmaids, all with beautiful gowns and everything. She had this immense wedding. All these people, all the nobility came, and it was unplanned. It was just a miracle given to her by Diana. So when the priest sent a servant into this room where all the bridal party was to ask if they needed anything, instead of finding the 10 bridesmaids there where they should be, instead was a beautiful carved image out of wood of the 10 bridesmaids and the goddess Diana standing on the moon. And supposedly to this day, that image is still in a church in Satardo. This image has been replicated, and it can be seen in other churches in Italy. And this story, because if you dissect the word of her name, Rorasa, and the Latin meanings, it somehow means dew, the dew that had fallen and risen again or something. And so this story is said to be kind of a description of dew, how dew, the water falls, and then in the influence of the moonlight, the vapor rises again. Because basically this girl fell from her status of being, so beautiful and rich and all that, and she fell, and then she was risen again by the goddess. I thought that was a really beautiful story. Okay, I have time to do a second little folk story in here. It's called The House of Wind. Now there was a young woman who her parents had her, and she was the only child. They loved her very, very much. But her mother, being a very devout Catholic woman, had decided before the girl could even speak that she was going to become a nun. There was no two ways about it. This mother drilled it into her head, but the little girl didn't want that. She wanted to grow up and get married and have a family like everyone else. When she expressed this to her mother was very angry, and she decided to send her away. She sent her into this home of a very rich, people thought devout, governess. So the girl was locked up with this governess, and at night she would hear a sound, and it caught her attention. So she decided to sneak out of her bedroom and see what was going on, what this governess was doing. And come to find out, she was a devotee of Diana. And at night she would go out and kneel and be praying to the moon. So instead of becoming a nun and teaching her this governess taught her to worship Diana instead of promoting her becoming a nun. So this girl, when they found this out, that she still wasn't going to become a nun, they tried locking her up in a tower. They threatened her, but she prayed to Diana. So each time she prayed to Diana, she was set free. Finally, they decided to lock her up again. They keep catching her, of course. And so they're all guarding the tower. These nobility, the mother, they're watching around the tower from a palace. And a huge wind. Oh, because she's going to be put to death. That's right. So they're making sure she can't escape now, and they decided to put her to death. So the day before she's about to die, she gets down and prays with all her heart to Diana that she would like her life to be spared. And Diana comes with a huge wind and knocks the palace down, kills all the oppressors of this girl. And the girl ends up marrying the love of her life and living happily ever after. So it's a lovely little story. And it's said that the House of Wind still stands today. Yeah, so I thought that that was a beautiful story. There's another story from Florence, which is about Diana, the goddess of chastity. There was a poor but beautiful girl who she worked as a laborer in various farms, and a young, ugly man, very ugly, bestial, fell in love with her. She couldn't even stand to look at the guy. So one day when she's done with work and she's walking home, he jumps out at her and he says, "You will be mine." And he attempts to rape her. There's nobody around, and she calls out with all of her heart to the moon. It's a full moon, and she begs the moon to save her. And a shadowy figure comes out of nowhere, and it has this whole thing that it says to her, to the guy as it's kicking his butt, and saves her. So I thought that was a very beautiful story. Another one about Diana that comes from Florence is about a noble family. But they're very noble. They were rich over the centuries, but they lost their wealth. They still live in their palace, and they want to keep up appearances. They don't want anybody to know that they're poor now. So this family has 2 young children, a boy and a girl, and they're out in the yard, and they're picking flowers. Now, in their garden is a statue of Diana, the goddess, but at this time you're not allowed to openly worship anything but God, because Catholicism is everywhere. So no pagan things are allowed. So the children are picking flowers and making like crowns of flowers, and the little girl says, "We should give the statue some flowers." So they crown Diana with the flowers, and they put some at her feet. Now this family has almost nothing to eat, so they're just barely surviving. The next morning after they did this for Diana, there's a freshly killed deer out there for the family. So they continue to give offerings to Diana, and they are continuously provided food by her. But they can't tell anybody because they'll be prosecuted for not being Catholic. So a mean priest notices the crown of flowers on Diana, and he becomes enraged. So he throws a rotten cabbage at the statue. And the next day, he hears, before he goes to sleep, he hears a voice saying, "You have been warned, and you will get the same offering that you have given me," which is the rotted cabbage. And he wakes up and finds a rotting human head on his chest. That was one of the people who had been to the Catholic Church for confession the previous day. So that's a pretty cool story too. You get what you offer. It's almost like the threefold law, or you get what you give. So I will make another video shortly. Bye.